Rain hammered violently against the broken skylight of Haven for her. The storm outside tearing through the night as if the sky itself were angry. Water dripped in relentless streams onto the concrete floor, turning the spreading pool of blood beneath Alexander Hale into swirling crimson patterns that looked almost unreal, like a painting too brutal to belong in the real world. Emergency lights blinked in sharp stuttering pulses of red casting shadows that jerked and trembled across the hallway, each flicker exposing the fallen billionaire in a harsher light. His once pristine white shirt, tailored to perfection and recognizable across every tech magazine in Manhattan, was shredded and soaked. Rainwater mixed with blood until no one could tell where one ended and the other began. Alexander Hale, the man the media called the locked heart billionaire, lay unmoving, his breath shallow, his skin growing gray, his eyes half-lidded with fading consciousness. But even now, even bleeding out on the cold concrete, there was something fiercely human in the way he clung to life. Something stubborn, something heartbreakingly vulnerable, and something Sienna Brooke could not bear to lose. "Alex, Alex, stay with me," she cried, her voice cracking, as she dropped to her knees beside him, her palms pressing desperately against the wound in his side. Her hands trembled violently, slick with his warm blood, sliding helplessly as she tried to apply pressure. The storm outside howled, rattling the windows, but Sienna's heartbeat was louder than everything. "Why would you do this?" she whispered, her voice breaking, her hair plastered to her face from the rain pouring through the broken ceiling. "Why would you bleed for me?" Her words shook as much as her hands. She'd seen injuries before, bruises, cuts, broken bones working at the shelter. But nothing like this, nothing that sliced through her the way it did now. Seeing a man who never let anyone close, lying helpless in her arms, fighting for every breath. Alex's eyelids fluttered, barely lifting, but he turned toward her voice with a heartbreaking instinct, as if she were the only sound he recognized through the chaos. "Sienna." He breathed the syllables, weak, wet with pain. He tried to raise his hand, and his fingers brushed her wrist so lightly she almost didn't feel it. "You asked me." He coughed hard, a flash of agony twisting across his face as a thin line of blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Still, he forced out the words with the last of his strength. "If I wanted a home." Sienna froze, tears spilling over as the memory stabbed through her, her whisper under the dim penthouse lights. His haunted expression, the way he'd looked like someone who hadn't been touched by warmth in years. But hearing him say it now here while bleeding out felt like the universe cracking open. "No, Alex, don't," she choked out, lowering herself over him as another burst of rainwater splashed onto his chest. "Don't talk. Don't waste your strength. Help is coming. Please just stay with me." His lips twitched into what might have been a smile if not for the pain. "I wanted to answer." His voice faded, swallowed by the storm. Sienna leaned closer, pressing harder on his wound, trying to shield him from the rain with her own body, even though she was shaking so hard she could barely hold herself up. "Why would you do this for me?" she whispered again, her forehead nearly touching his. "Why would you come back?" He made a faint sound, half breath, half tremor, his eyes attempting to focus on her. "Because?" Another ragged breath. "You're warm." The word hit her like thunder. A broken sob escaped her throat, but before she could say anything else, voices echoed down the hall. Flashlights cut through the dark. Boots splashed through puddles. Paramedics burst into the hallway with stretchers and equipment. "We need room move," one shouted. Hands pulled at Sienna, prying her away from Alex as she clung to him sturdily. "No, wait, please," she cried, her voice shattering as they lifted him. Her fingers left smears of blood across his shirt as she was forced backward, watching helplessly as paramedics worked frantically. Alex's head lolled to the side, eyes drifting shut, his breath a thin flickering thread. Sienna screamed, reaching for him, even as someone held her back. "Stay awake, please." But he didn't respond. Outside, sirens wailed through the storm, red and blue lights reflecting sharply through the broken skylight. The hallway filled with movement, shouting, rushing feet. Medical orders barked into radios. And in the far corner of the entrance, unnoticed in all the chaos, a lone figure stood, partially concealed behind the doorway. A journalist, phone raised, recording everything. His eyes, narrowed lips curling with the satisfaction of someone who knew he had just captured the most valuable footage in Manhattan. The billionaire who never let anyone close. Bleeding in the arms of a woman the world didn't know. A scandal ready to explode. He lowered his phone slowly, already imagining the headline. Meanwhile, Sienna collapsed to her knees, her blood-covered hands trembling as they reached toward the empty space where Alex had been. Rain kept falling through the broken ceiling, washing over her shoulders, as if trying to drown out the moment. She whispered into the storm, her voice small, raw, and breaking, "Please don't leave me." And the emergency doors slammed shut behind the paramedics as they raced Alex into the night. Alexander Hale did not believe in people, not in their promises, not in their apologies, not in their love. At 33, he had everything the world admired. Hale Dynamics, the multi-billion-dollar tech empire he'd built from a garage algorithm. A penthouse suspended above Manhattan, wrapped in glass walls. A face plastered across Forbes and Tech Time as the man with the coldest mind and the most brilliant intuition. But he had no one. Not anymore. The elevator doors slid open into his penthouse, releasing him into a world of silence so immaculate it felt sterile. The space was vast, breathtaking, designed by the best architects money could buy. But it echoed with emptiness. Floor-to-ceiling windows surrounded him with a panoramic view of the city. The walls he'd chosen, walls made of glass walls that let him see everything yet kept everyone else out. Walls he trusted more than human beings. Home sweet home. He muttered without emotion, dropping his rain-soaked coat on a marble chair. The storm outside cracked with lightning reflecting in the glass like multiplied fractures. He stared at it for a moment, expression unreadable, jaw tight. He had just returned from the hospital, checking on Marlene from logistics, a single mother he'd anonymously sponsored for years. Something no reporter would ever know. Out there he was ruthless. In private he was complicated. He preferred it that way. He loosened his tie, walked through the penthouse, and every step echoed across the massive hardwood floor. He didn't turn on the lights. Darkness suited him. Darkness didn't demand anything. Darkness didn't ask him to love back. His phone buzzed. A notification flashed across the screen, bright and intrusive. Aubrey Lane posted, "Some men don't know what they want, especially the cold ones. Try harder, ladies." Alex scoffed softly and tossed the phone aside. Aubrey Lane, a Hollywood starlet with 12 million followers, had been trying to attach her name to his for years. Lavish parties, suggestive interviews, rumors deliberately leaked. None of it worked. Alex didn't date celebrities. He didn't date anyone. Not since Elena. The thought punched him sharp, unwelcome but familiar. Elena Price. The woman who once twisted him into believing he could have a future. The woman who laughed with him in private and criticized him in public. The woman who died because paparazzi chased her car off a wet freeway the night she left his apartment after an argument about boundaries. The flashes blinded her, the cameras trapped her, the world killed her. He had never forgiven himself. He had never forgiven the world either. From that night on, his heart shuttered like a locked vault. He avoided cameras, avoided love, avoided attachments, avoided anything that could be used against him. A fortress of rules, a fortress of isolation, and glass walls predictable, emotionless, unbreakable. His security system chimed reporting diagnostic updates, Hail Dynamics software. His creation ran quietly in the background, monitoring every entry point, every window, every code. Control was the only thing he trusted. Control was the only thing he had left. He sat at his desk, the glow from 3 monitors reflecting off his face like cold fire. Lines of code scrolled. Reports awaited review. Investor demands pinged in his inbox. People wanted things from him every second of every day. That was the problem with people. They always wanted something. Want, take, leave, break. He rubbed his temples as another message appeared from his PR team. Media pushing for statements. Aubrey hinted you're emotionally unstable. We need to counter before it escalates. He ignored it. Aubrey's obsession with him had crossed into dangerous territory months ago. She'd attempted to kiss him on camera. She'd tried to show up at his home. She'd even, according to a private investigator, sent in a fake charity proposal to get close. He rejected her every time, and the more distance he created, the harder she pushed. Let her talk. Let them all talk. Their voices bounced off the glass and disappeared. Silence reclaimed the penthouse as Alex leaned back in his chair. Rain smeared down the windows in diagonal paths, distorting the view of the city into blurred streaks of gold and gray. The skyline shimmered like melting metal. He liked it that way. Nothing clear, nothing defined. Nothing close enough to touch. People always said he looked detached. They were right. Humanity was a liability. Empathy was a flaw. Caring was the beginning of losing. But even as he embraced the isolation, something gnawed at him tonight. A faint, unsettling echo of vulnerability. A sensation he tried to dismiss. The storm. The woman. The child locked inside the shelter room. The fear in her voice when she called the Hail Dynamics hotline. It had triggered something inside him, something buried under years of cold discipline, something he hadn't felt since Elena's last breath. Why did her voice affect me? He wondered, fingers curling slightly. He didn't like not having answers, especially when the question came from a stranger he shouldn't care about. He stood and walked toward the windows, staring at the storm as if it could swallow him whole. Thunder rolled across Manhattan. Lightning illuminated his reflection, a man with perfect posture, impeccable control, and eyes that carried more ghosts than light. A man untouched, unreachable, locked. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, Alexander Hale remained unmoved cold as the walls surrounding him. But somewhere miles downtown, in a shelter he had never planned to walk, into the universe had already begun, unraveling the only life he thought he could survive. And though he didn't know it yet, the woman he would bleed, for the woman who would whisper, the only question capable of breaking him, had already stepped into his world the moment she called for help. The storm hit the city like a living thing, wild, thrashing, furious. Manhattan's skyline blurred under sheets of rain as wind slammed against buildings with the force of 1,000 fists. Thunder cracked so sharply it rattled the windows. Of Haven for Her, the women's shelter, tucked between two abandoned warehouses on the Lower East Side. Inside, the lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. The hallway fell into darkness thick enough to taste. Sienna Brooks' heart lurched. Not tonight. Please, not tonight, she whispered as she fumbled for a flashlight. The shelter was full, 12 women and 5 children, every one of them already afraid of the dark of storms, of the memories storms brought. A metallic groan echoed through the facility as the backup generator failed to kick on. Miss Sienna, a little voice shrieked from the end of the hall. Emma, 6 years old, small as a sparrow, brave as a lion. Sienna sprinted toward the sound, her footsteps splashing through rising puddles as rain leaked from the unstable roof. Emma, sweetie, where are you? The door won't open, the girl cried. Sienna's stomach dropped. That room had an electronic lock, a system Hale Dynamics had designed 5 years earlier. It required power, and the outage had trapped Emma inside. Try to stay calm, baby. I'm right here, Sienna said, pressing her palm to the cold metal. She tugged the handle, but it didn't budge. Panic tasted like copper on her tongue. Thunder boomed again, closer this time. The building groaned. Another leak opened above her. Water dripped onto her shoulder, cold and unforgiving. She grabbed her phone, shaking fingers, scrolling through contacts until she found the number she prayed she'd never need. Hale Dynamics Emergency Security Line. She pressed call. It rang once, then connected. Hale Dynamics, state your emergency. The calm, masculine voice wasn't what she expected. Too deep, too steady, too present. The lock failed during an outage, she said hurriedly. A child is trapped inside. She's panicking. The storm is too strong, and we need someone fast. Please. Silence crackled for a second. What's your location? She gave the address. More silence, but this time heavier. Loaded. Stay by the door, the voice said. I'm on my way. Wait, who is this Alexander Hale? Her breath caught painfully, like someone had punched the air from her lungs. The billionaire. The man who built the system. The man the world claimed didn't believe in people. You, she whispered. You're coming here yourself. The storms fried the relay system. No one else can override it manually, he said flatly. Stay with the child until I arrive. The call ended without another word. Sienna stared at the dark screen, unable to process what had just happened. Alexander Hale, coming here, to her shelter, to this broken building in the middle of a storm. Because she asked for help. She knelt beside the locked door, pressing her forehead to it. Emma, sweetheart, listen to me, she whispered. Help is coming, the best help. Just sit on the floor and cover your ears? Okay, I'm scared. Emma whimpered. I know, baby, me too. But you're not alone. The storm's roar swallowed her words. The wind screamed through the broken vents. Minutes passed painfully slow. Then heavy footsteps splashing through the flooded entrance. A second later, a beam of bright white light sliced through the hallway. Sienna turned and her breath caught. Alexander Hale stood in the doorway like he'd stepped out of another world, rain pouring off his black coat, hair-soaked eyes, sharp even in near darkness. He looked nothing like the glossy magazine covers. He looked dangerous, determined, human, and soaked to the bone. Where's the door? He asked. She pointed silently. He moved immediately. No hesitation, No disgust at the leaking roof or the peeling walls or the flickering exit signs. He dropped to his knees beside the panel, sweeping a wet hand across the surface. "System's dead," he muttered. "Manual override sealed." "Can you open it?" she asked anxiously. He glanced at her just a flicker, but it was enough to cause a strange pull low in her stomach. "I didn't come here to fail." He stood, braced himself, and drove his shoulder into the metal. The entire frame shuddered. He hit it again and again. Sienna winced at the dull, sickening thud each time his body collided with it. "Alex, stop, you'll hurt yourself." "She's scared," he snapped, breath harsh. "She shouldn't have to wait." Thunder exploded overhead, shaking dust from the ceiling. He backed up 3 steps, then slammed his full weight into the door. It burst open with a metallic scream. Emma tumbled into his arms. He caught her effortlessly, pulling her tight against his soaked chest. "Got you," he murmured, voice low and rough. "You're okay now." The hallway lights flickered back on for half a second, just long enough to illuminate the scene, the coldest billionaire in Manhattan, kneeling in a puddle, rainwater dripping from his hair, holding a trembling child to his chest with a gentleness that didn't match the man the world knew. And someone was watching. A faint glow from a cell phone camera reflected off the wet floor. Someone at the entrance captured the moment. A stranger, a witness, a future problem. But not yet, not now. Alex looked up at Sienna as he rose, Emma still clutching his neck. Something unspoken crackled between them, raw, unexpected, electric. "She'll need warm clothes," he said quietly. "And you're shaking." Sienna hadn't realized she was. "I'll manage," she whispered. But her voice betrayed her. "No," he said softly, almost too softly for the storm to hear. "You shouldn't have to." And for the first time, she wondered if Manhattan's coldest heart had just warmed, if only by a degree. The storm didn't let up the entire night. By dawn, Manhattan looked bruised streets, flooded traffic lights, hanging crooked trees bent sideways, like they had been begging the wind for mercy. Haven for her wasn't any better. Half the roof had leaked, water pooled through the hallways, blankets were soaked, food supplies ruined. The generator sputtered out its last dying gasp. Sienna stood in the center of the chaos, hair matted to her face, sleeves rolled past her elbows as she tried to organize 12 frightened women and 5 children with nothing but a clipboard and hope that today wouldn't break her spirit. It felt close, though, too close. Emma clung to her leg like a frightened kitten. "Miss Sienna, is the roof going to fall?" Sienna forced calm into her voice. "No, sweetheart, we're okay. We just need a safe place until the contractors arrive." But she had no safe place, not for everyone. Not with the building this damaged, not with half the city underwater. She checked her phone battery at 6%. No power to charge. The city's emergency shelters were overflowing. Hotels were booked. She had nowhere left to turn. Until a low, unfamiliar engine rumbled outside. A sleek black SUV, shining despite the storm's anger, pulled up in front of the shelter. The back door opened, and Alexander Hale stepped out like he didn't belong in this world of broken roofs and flickering lights and shivering children. His presence carved through the chaos like a blade. His suit was dry-pressed impossibly clean, as if he had rebuilt himself the moment he left her last night. But his eyes were different, still cold, but not the same kind of cold, more controlled, focused, and locked on her. "You need help," he said simply. No judgment, no pity. Just an observation so blunt she didn't know how to answer. The city shelters are full. Sienna responded, pushing damp strands of hair from her face. We'll figure something out. You won't, he said not unkindly. Not fast enough, not safely. She stiffened. We don't have many options. Yes, you do. He turned, slightly nodding toward the SUV. Pack your necessities. Your women and children will stay with me. Sienna blinked. Stay with you in my building, Alex clarified. The penthouse level has enough space and backup generators, food, heat. They're strangers to you, she said slowly, as if trying to make him hear the absurdity. They need safety, he replied. I can provide it. Mr. Hale, Alex, your home isn't designed for. Walls are still walls, he murmured, voice low. If they keep people safe, they're serving a purpose. Sienna's chest tightened at the strange tone beneath his words. She didn't know what to say. The women behind her whispered among themselves, fear and hope tangled together. He's the billionaire from the news, one murmured. Is it safe he saved the girl last night? Another whispered. Sienna turned to them. No one has to go if they don't want to. This isn't an order. It's an option. Just an option. But the truth was clear, they didn't have many. One by one the women nodded. Emma tugged her sleeve. Miss Sienna, I want to go where the man who saved me goes. The words hit her harder than she expected. When she turned back, Alex was still watching her unreadable. I'll arrange transport, he said. 2 more SUVs are coming. Why are you doing this? She finally asked. His jaw flexed. Because someone needs to. It wasn't a real answer, but it was the only one he offered. Within 20 minutes, bags were packed, children bundled in blankets, and women shepherded into the SUVs. Sienna double-checked every seatbelt, every bag, every frightened face. And every time she turned around, Alex was there, silent, watchful, unshakable. As if he'd taken responsibility for all of them without asking permission. When she moved to lock the shelter doors for the last time before the building was inspected, Alex stopped beside her. You're shaking, it's cold, she said automatically. And we're leaving everything behind. Not everything he said. And for a moment she didn't understand. Then his eyes softened barely, but undeniably. You're bringing them, he added. That's the only part that matters. The ride to his building was surreal. Manhattan was drowning in storm debris, while the Hale Dynamics Tower stood tall, a monolith of power and untouched luxury. When the SUVs pulled into the private underground entrance, security guards were already lined up, prepared for his arrival. Sienna's heart pounded. She had never been in a place like this. Neither had any of the women. Their shoes echoed on marble. Their breaths caught at the sheer size of the space. Everything gleamed. Everything was polished. Everything screamed money. And Alex walked ahead of them as if this were the most natural thing in the world. The penthouse level has a guest wing, he said. We'll convert it into temporary housing. Why, one woman blurted, why help us at all? Alex paused. Just a fraction. Enough that Sienna noticed. Because last night, he said quietly, a child looked at me like I wasn't distant. Something unspoken passed through the hallway. Something vulnerable. Something raw. Sienna felt it like a pulse under her skin. She followed him into the private elevator, reserved for executives, a place she had no business being. Their shoulders brushed. Electricity shot through her. Alex stiffened almost imperceptibly. When the doors opened, the penthouse unfolded into a world of glass, steel, and city lights. It was breathtaking, cold, perfect, and completely wrong for the frightened faces behind her. We'll make it work, she whispered to herself, stepping forward. Alex heard. I'll adjust whatever needs adjusting, he said. Tell me what they need. Warmth, she replied. Privacy, food, blankets, a place where they don't feel like they're intruding. He held her gaze. Then that's what they'll get. In that moment, brief, fragile, unspoken, the world of a billionaire and the world of a shelter worker collided in a way neither of them could have predicted, and neither of them would ever recover from. Night in the penthouse did not feel like night anywhere else. It didn't settle gently. It didn't dim gradually. It transformed the entire space into a glass kingdom suspended in darkness, the city stretching beneath like a glittering ocean of fractured stars. For the women and children Sienna had brought with her, the place felt alien, too quiet, too big, too clean. But they were fed warm and safe. That was all that mattered. When the last of them fell asleep in the newly converted guest wing, Sienna stepped into the dimly lit living room, exhaustion dragging at every limb. She needed water, maybe air, maybe silence long enough to gather herself before she fell apart. Instead, she found Alexander Hale standing before the massive window wall, hands in his pockets, shoulders perfectly straight, like a statue carved out of stormlight and glass. City lights painted gold onto the sharp edges of his jaw. His reflection hovered in front of him, dark, tall, unmistakably alone. He didn't turn when she approached, but she knew he sensed her. People like him always did. They're settled, Sienna said softly, keeping her voice low in case it echoed in the grand open space. The kids are scared, but they're warm. Thank you, truly. You don't have to thank me, he replied, still facing the city. You called, I came. Most billionaires wouldn't, she said before she could stop herself. His head tilted slightly, a slow breath. I'm not most billionaires. She almost smiled at that, but didn't. Instead, she stepped beside him, leaving a respectful distance, though her heart beat faster, simply being within arm's reach. The skyline stretched before them in an endless tapestry of light. Do you ever sleep? She asked. Sometimes. That doesn't sound convincing. Sleep feels like surrender, he murmured. And I don't surrender easily. She studied his reflection. His eyes were fixed on the city, but his hands strong, elegant. Capable hands were curled loosely in his pockets, tension coiled just beneath the surface. You didn't rest after last night, she said. You came straight here this morning. And now you're standing here like you're expecting the storm to come through the glass. His jaw tightened. Storms are predictable. People aren't. She turned toward him fully then. You helped us anyway. He finally looked at her. A real look. Direct. Sharp. As if he were cataloging every detail of her face, every expression, every breath. It made her pulse jump. Someone had to, he said quietly. And you think it always has to be you. It's easier for whom Sienna challenged, you or the people who don't know how to reach you. He stiffened, not angrily, reflexively, like she had touched a bruise. You don't know me, he said. Not yet. She didn't back down. But I see you. His throat worked at that, something unreadable, flickering in his eyes, fear maybe, or recognition. His gaze dropped briefly to her hands, still scraped from breaking debris off the shelter door earlier. You're injured, he said. She shrugged. Nothing serious. You should let someone treat that. I have, many times. It's part of the job. It shouldn't have to be. She exhaled her breath, fogging faintly against the cold glass. We don't all get to choose what pain we carry. Silence settled between them, dense but not hostile, charged. He looked back out the window. This view, he said almost to himself, people think it's power or freedom, All I see is height. Height can be beautiful, she murmured, or isolating. He didn't respond, but she could tell he knew exactly which one applied to him. Alex. She began the name tasting unfamiliar but right. He didn't flinch, didn't correct her. A small victory. You said something earlier, she continued. When I asked why you were doing this, his gaze lowered to the floor. I said someone needed to, but I think it's more than that. The air grew taut. You don't know what you're talking about, he said quietly. Then help me understand. He met her eyes again, sharply this time, as if startled by her persistence. Why do you care because you're carrying weight no one sees, she whispered. Because you came in the middle of a storm for a child you didn't know. Because you're standing in this enormous penthouse with a world of glass around you, and you look like the loneliest person I've ever met. His breath hitched so slight she might have imagined it. He looked away too quickly. She stepped closer before she could stop herself, not touching, but near enough to feel his inhale brush her skin. The air between them crackled like static. You said walls make things predictable, she whispered. He closed his eyes as if her voice itself had weight. They do. Do they make you feel safe? Another long silence, then barely audible sometimes. And other times his eyes opened, haunted, exposed. Other times they make everything feel empty. Sienna felt something inside her shift painfully achingly. She didn't know why, but she wanted to close that emptiness with her bare hands. She moved closer again, slow enough to give him time to pull back, but he didn't. He didn't move at all. Alex, she breathed, her voice trembling, despite her best efforts. You're surrounded by walls you think you need. His throat worked. I do need them. Do you? She whispered. He swallowed hard. His eyes flicked to her lips for a fraction of a second. A dangerous second. A second that made her entire body warm. I don't, he said, voice cracking, know how to want anything beyond them. And that those words broke something in her. Something protective. Something tender. Something that had been afraid to reach for him. She stepped into his space fully now, so close that her breath mingled with his. Her chest brushed his arm. Her fingers nearly touched his. The city glowed behind them, two silhouettes framed in gold and shadow. He looked at her like she was a question he didn't know how to answer. So she answered for him. Slowly, gently, deliberately, she rose onto her toes and brought her lips near his ear, not touching, just close enough for him to feel the warmth of her breath. Her voice became a whisper, soft enough to break glass. Do you want a home? She breathed, or just walls? His entire frame shuddered. She felt it, saw it, a fracture through steel. A sound escaped him, half gasp, half surrender. So quiet she almost didn't catch it. He turned his head slightly, just enough to meet her eyes again. And for the first time since she'd met him, Alexander Hale looked unmistakably afraid. Not of her, but of the truth she'd touched. Sienna. He whispered her name, falling from his lips like something forbidden. Why would you ask me that? Because you need to hear it, she murmured. Because you came into a storm for a child who wasn't yours. Because you let 12 strangers into your home. Because the walls around you aren't keeping you safe anymore. They're keeping you lonely. A tremor passed through his breath. Lightning flashed across the glass, illuminating them in stark white light. He looked like a man standing on the edge of something he couldn't name. Something he couldn't escape. Something he didn't want to. You have no idea what you're doing to me, he said, voice hoarse. Maybe she whispered. Or maybe I do. Her lips hovered just inches from his, close enough to be a promise, close enough to be a beginning. But she didn't close the distance, neither did he. That was the brilliance of the moment, raw, suspended, fragile, devastating. A single whisper breaking years of ice, a single breath melting the walls he'd built. And somewhere outside, unseen in the neighboring building, a camera lens zoomed in on the two figures standing too close beside the glass, capturing the exact moment the coldest billionaire in Manhattan cracked. Morning didn't gently arrive in Manhattan. It crashed in like a wave of notifications, alerts, deadlines, and noise. But inside the penthouse, the first sound Sienna heard was a soft chime from the central control panel, a sound that made her stomach twist even before she fully opened her eyes on the couch in the guest lounge. Something was wrong. She felt it in the air. Too much movement, too many footsteps, too much tension. When she stepped into the main hall, she found Alex surrounded by his PR chief, two executive assistants, and his head of communications, all talking over each other with rising panic. Screens across the wall flashed headlines. She didn't need to get closer to understand. Her photo was everywhere, hers and Alex's, standing too close beside the glass wall, her head tilted toward his body leaning slightly into her space, frozen in that electric moment from the night before. One whisper away. Exclusive, the locked heart billionaire and the shelter girl. Alex Hale's secret romance walls cracking. Who is Sienna Brooke? Sienna felt the blood drain from her face. He saw her before the others did. His eyes tightened almost imperceptibly, but he covered it well. Everyone out, Alex said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was the kind of controlled, lethal calm that made people obey instinctively. The room cleared within seconds. Only the two of them remained. Silence stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Sienna swallowed. Alex, it's not your fault, he said, immediately startling her. None of this is your fault. But the tightness in his jaw said he was fighting a war on 10 different fronts. She stepped toward one of the screens and touched the headline with trembling fingers. This photo? How did someone across the street? He said. Someone in the Westview Tower got a clear angle. Probably a reporter or someone who sold it to a reporter. Her heart sank. This will make things worse for the women. For the shelter. They already get judged for everything I know. His voice cracked slightly. That frightened her more than the headlines. Alex, what happens now? He turned toward the window, the same spot where the photo had been taken, and exhaled slowly, as if trying to keep himself from breaking something. Now, he said, now we control what we can, and survive what we can't. Before she could respond, his PR chief burst back into the room without waiting for permission. Alex, we have a bigger issue, Aubrey Lane posted. Alex closed his eyes, shoulders tensing. Sienna grabbed the phone the woman held out. Aubrey's Instagram story was a carefully curated masterpiece of passive-aggressive cruelty, a soft-focus selfie, her lips in a pitiful pout. Captioned, when you try for years, but he chooses a charity case instead. Guess some hearts just stay locked for the wrong people. Disappointed. Safety first. He deserves better. Sienna's stomach twisted. Alex's face hardened into stone. She's implying I'm dangerous, Sienna whispered. She's implying you're unworthy. Alex corrected sharply. Which is worse? Sienna looked away. Her pulse roared in her ears. We need a statement, the PR chief said. Today, preferably within the next hour. Something that distances you from this woman. This woman is standing right here, Alex replied coldly. Watch your phrasing. The PR chief paled. Sorry, sir. I only meant I know what you meant," Alex said. His eyes flicked to Sienna. Pain flashed there, brief but unmistakable. "What do you want from me?" he asked quietly. Not to the PR chief, but to her. She froze. "Me, yes, you." He took a step toward her, and suddenly they were closer than they should have been. Closer than the headlines claimed, closer than her pounding heart could handle. "Do you want me to deny everything?" he asked. "Say you're no one to me. Say last night meant nothing." The words hit her like blows. "Alex," she whispered, "this isn't about pride or dignity. It's about safety. For the shelter, for the women, for Emma. They can't be associated with scandal." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Say what you want me to do. You know what needs to happen," she said, voice breaking. His chest rose and fell in a slow, pained breath. "You want me to distance myself," he murmured, "to pretend you're just someone I helped. If you don't, you're investors." "They can go to hell." "Alex," she said softly, pleading, "please." His eyes locked on hers, and what she saw there, anger, hurt, longing, confusion, made her throat tighten. Then his phone buzzed. The PR chief flinched. "It's the investors," she said. "They're demanding a private meeting in 10 minutes. Alex didn't look away from Sienna. "They saw the rumors," the PR chief continued. "They're afraid if you don't make a statement, we could lose major backing." Sienna stepped back, as if the words physically pushed her. "Alex, go." "I'm not leaving this conversation unfinished. It already is," she whispered, "for now." His eyes burned into hers. She forced herself to breathe. "Do what you need to do, to protect your company, your people. And what about you?" She smiled sadly. "I'm not your people." He flinched just barely. Then he turned and walked away, the tension in his shoulders visible even through the expensive fabric of his suit. The elevator doors closed behind him. Sienna felt like the entire penthouse exhaled the moment he left, quiet, heavy, lonely. She didn't move for a long time, didn't breathe, didn't think. Then the automatic newsfeed updated again on the wall screen. A new headline popped up. "Shareholders demand action. Hale must cut ties with shelter worker to save stock plunge." Her heart dropped. Investors wanted him to sign a legally binding condition to avoid Sienna completely or risk losing millions. And somewhere across the city, Aubrey Lane refreshed her notifications with a satisfied smile. The rain had finally stopped by the time evening settled over Manhattan. But inside Sienna's chest, the storm hadn't eased. All day she had tried to focus on the women in the guest wing, helping them settle, comforting the ones overwhelmed by the intimidating luxury, keeping the children occupied. But her mind kept looping back to Alex, to the way he looked at her before leaving, to the unspoken pain in his eyes, to the fact that she had asked him to distance himself for safety, for survival, and it still felt like she had cut something vital. By late afternoon, the women were resting, and the penthouse was quiet. Sienna stepped out onto the balcony for a breath of air that didn't taste like fear. The city was washed clean from the storm lights, shimmering off wet streets like reflections in broken glass. She wrapped her arms around herself, staring at the skyline as her mind churned. She didn't hear footsteps behind her until the glass door slid open and someone whispered, "Miss Sienna." She turned instantly. Emma stood there holding a stuffed rabbit someone had donated months ago. The little girl's eyes looked too old for 6 years, too aware. "Sweetheart, you should be asleep," Sienna said softly, moving closer and kneeling to her level. "I can't," Emma murmured. "There's a bad man." Sienna's breath froze. "Did someone scare you?" Emma shook her head, clutching her stuffed rabbit tighter. Not here, before. He hurt Auntie Rose. And he said he'll hurt you too if you don't stop helping me. Sienna's blood ran cold. That voice, those threats, those memories. The name she tried never to think about. Emma's bad man wasn't imaginary. He was real. He was free. And he was looking for them. She forced a calm she didn't feel. Emma, did you see him outside the window at the shelter last week? Emma whispered. He had a letter. Ice crawled up Sienna's spine. The letter. The one she'd dismissed as a sick prank. She swallowed hard. Emma, you're safe now. He can't get in here. The girl nodded, but fear still clung to her tiny body. Sienna held her close until she fell asleep in her arms, then gently carried her back to bed. Only when Emma was finally breathing steadily did Sienna allow panic to ripple through her. She stepped into the hallway, pulling out her phone 5% battery. She dialed the local police station, filed a report, left details. They didn't sound optimistic. With the storm backlog, we'll try to send someone by tomorrow, the dispatcher said. Tomorrow felt like a lifetime away. She hung up and returned to the living room, only to find Alex standing there leaning against the kitchen counter. Still in his suit from meetings tie loosened, but tension radiating off him in waves. She startled. Alex, I thought you were still in meetings. I was, he said, voice low. They dragged on longer than they should have. His eyes swept her face, instantly narrowing. You're pale, just tired. No, he said, taking a step toward her. This is something else. She tried to speak, but the words tangled. His expression sharpened. Tell me. It's Emma's past, Sienna whispered. Her mother's ex. He's out, and he's been looking for her. For us. Alex's jaw tightened a flash of something dark crossing his features. Why didn't you report this earlier? I didn't know how serious it was until tonight, she said quietly. I didn't want to cause a scene. 'Cause a scene, he repeated, incredulous. Sienna, this isn't a gossip headline. This is safety. She swallowed. The police are delayed. It might be days before they can act. Days. He laughed, but it wasn't humor. It was disbelief, mixed with anger. Did you tell my security? No, I didn't want to make your team deal with stop, he said sharply, stepping closer. You don't get to decide which dangers matter. Her breath hitched. His presence was overwhelming, intense, protective, terrifyingly alive. You don't have to get involved in this, she whispered. I already am, he said, whether you want me to be or not. Before she could reply, his phone buzzed violently. He glanced at the screen, and everything inside him shifted. Someone tried to breach the Hale Dynamics security grid, he said through gritted teeth. They targeted access to the shelter's archives. Sienna's heart crashed. That's him. Or someone he hired, Alex, said, already moving toward his desk, fingers flying across the keyboard as lines of code filled the screens. A freelance hacker tried to override our encryption protocols. Failed. But they got close. Sienna felt the room tilt. Close. How close? Alex didn't answer right away. Not because he was ignoring her, but because he was calculating the danger with terrifying precision. Close enough that I'm done letting this be handled by anyone else. She took a step forward. Alex? He stood abruptly, turning toward her with a force that made the air between them vibrate. He threatened Emma. Yes, he threatened you. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. His eyes darkened something primal, flickering beneath the polished Billionaire facade. He put a letter in my building earlier this week, Alex said quietly. I didn't take it seriously. That's on me. Sienna's breath stilled. A letter. It was vague. I thought it was a disgruntled employee. But now his voice dropped. Now it fits. Fear clawed at her chest. Alex, I never wanted you dragged into this. Dragged in, he repeated, stepping forward, until he was close enough for her to feel the heat of his anger, his protectiveness, his fear. Sienna, I walked into a storm for you. You think I'm going to stand back while someone hunts you? Her lips parted, but nothing came out. His next words were softer. I'm not leaving you unprotected. Not again. Not ever. Something hot and painful and beautiful twisted inside her. She forced herself to steady her voice. What do we do? Alex inhaled deeply, then spoke with the cold clarity of a man who had built empires out of algorithms and unbreakable systems. We upgrade Haven for her security tonight. All of it he won't get within a mile. She blinked. Tonight. But it's late tonight, he repeated. I'm not waiting for another storm. And as he turned back to his screens, the reflection of his face in the glass was no longer cold, no longer distant. It was the face of a man who had someone worth fighting for, even if he didn't know how to say it aloud yet. Night settled over Manhattan, not softly but like pressure, thick, heavy humming, with the kind of tension that made the city feel alive and dangerous at the same time. The penthouse lights were dim. Alex insisted on conserving power, while the backup systems finished syncing with the new security protocols he'd pushed to Haven for her. Sienna stood near the window, arms wrapped around herself, as she watched the reflection of the city pulse beneath her. Every instinct in her body screamed that something was coming. She could feel it in the way Emma clung to her earlier, in the way Alex's jaw tightened every time his phone buzzed, in the way the air felt charged like a storm had returned, even though the sky was clear. Downstairs, 2 security teams rotated around the building. Cameras were active, motion sensors calibrated, and yet danger didn't care about preparation. It slipped through cracks, shadows, human fear. Alex stepped beside her, the faint glow of the city outlining his silhouette. He didn't touch her, but his presence was an anchor she desperately needed. The system is fully integrated, he said quietly. No one gets into Haven without alerting me first. I trust you, Sienna whispered. You're scared, he finished. You're allowed to be. She looked up at him, startled. For a moment, the cold billionaire facade cracked, and something raw shone through fear. Yes, but also something tender, almost fragile. But before she could answer, a sound vibrated through the room. A sharp, piercing alarm. Alex stiffened instantly. Motion detection, underground entrance. Sienna's heart dropped. The shelter. Alex grabbed his coat. Stay here, no. Her voice broke. Emma is there. The women are there. I have to go. Alex turned sharply, gripping her shoulders. Sienna, listen to me. Whoever it is, they're dangerous. You can't run into that unprotected. She met his eyes, breathing fast. They're my responsibility. Something flickered in his expression, fear, frustration, but also respect. The kind he rarely showed anyone. Fine, he said low. But you stay beside me the entire time. She nodded. Within minutes, they were in his car, speeding through Manhattan streets, still slick from the storm. The city lights streaked across the windshield like fractured stars. Alex's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Security should have been faster, he muttered. I should have put more men there. You did everything you could, she said. No, he whispered. Not everything. His voice trembled in a way she'd never heard. They arrived at the shelter to find the front entrance intact, but eerily silent, too silent. Alex grabbed a flashlight from the trunk, then reached for her hand without thinking, and she didn't let go. They stepped inside. The hallway lights flickered weakly. A cold draft rolled through the building, carrying the familiar scent of fear dust and something metallic. "Alex," she whispered the safe room. "We go there first," he said. They moved quickly, passing murals painted by the women toys scattered from the afternoon, a small shoe Emma must have dropped during playtime. Sienna bent to pick it up and froze. Footsteps, heavy, dragging, coming from the opposite end of the hallway. Alex stepped in front of her instantly. "Stay behind me." The footsteps grew louder. Shadows stretched under the emergency exit door. Someone tried the handle slowly, deliberately. The door creaked open. A man stepped inside, tall, muscular, a face she recognized immediately. The man who terrorized Emma's mother. The man who had broken Rose's ribs. The man who had threatened Sienna for helping them escape. Her blood turned to ice. Alex felt her flinch, and his entire body shifted shoulders, broadening stance, firming instinctively protective. "You," the man snarled, staring at Sienna like she was prey. "You think you can take what's mine?" Alex stepped forward, voice cold enough to freeze the air. "Take one more step toward her, and you won't walk again." The man sneered. "Who the hell are you?" "The person you should have feared years ago," Alex said. Then everything happened at once. The man lunged. Alex pushed Sienna back, absorbing the full impact as they crashed against the wall. The flashlight hit the floor, spinning wildly and throwing chaotic beams across the hallway. The man swung again. Alex blocked, but took a blow to the ribs. Sienna grabbed the nearest object, a metal donation box, and hurled it at the attacker. It struck his shoulder. He roared and turned toward her. No, Alex shoved himself between them, taking a slash from the knife the man suddenly pulled. Blood soaked through Alex's shirt, dark and fast. Sienna screamed, catching him as he staggered. The attacker charged again, but suddenly a small voice screamed from the end of the hall. "Mommy Emma." Standing in the doorway of the safe room, crying, trembling, reaching for Sienna. The attacker turned toward the child. No, Sienna ran instincts overpowering fear. She grabbed Emma, shielding her with her body. Alex, bleeding heavily, hurled himself forward with a force driven by fury and fear. He tackled the attacker, slamming him into the ground. Alarms blared. Security stormed in. The attacker was dragged away, screaming threats, and Alex collapsed. Alex, stay with me." Sienna fell to the floor beside him, pulling him into her arms. Rainwater from a leaking section of the roof dripped onto his face, mixing with blood. His eyes fluttered open. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you risk yourself for me?" Her voice trembled violently. "Why would you bleed for me?" Alex's lips twitched in a faint, broken smile. "Because you asked me if I wanted a home." His hand weakly reached for hers. "And I think I just found it." Sirens wailed outside. Security shouted. Emma sobbed into her shoulder, and Sienna held Alex against her, realizing with terrifying clarity that she had just fallen for a man who would destroy walls and himself to protect her. The hospital lights were too bright, too white, too clean for what had just happened. Sienna sat in the corner of the trauma bay shirt and hands, stained with Alex's blood, still shaking so violently she had to hold her elbows to keep from falling apart. Medics moved around him in a blur, IVs, clamps, pressure dressings. Yet all she saw was his face pale under the fluorescent light, his lashes wet from rain and pain. Emma sat curled in her lap, trembling, clinging to Sienna's neck, as if afraid she'd disappear. "Ma'am, you need to step back," a nurse said softly. "We're stabilizing him." But Sienna couldn't move. Her body refused. Her heart refused. She had seen blood before, too many times. Too many women hurt by the men who claimed to love them. But seeing it on Alex because of her tore something open inside her chest that felt like grief and guilt tangled together. "Please," she whispered, "please don't let him." The nurse touched her shoulder gently. "He's strong. He's fighting. That was exactly the problem. Alex had fought for everything in his life. His company, his privacy, his sanity, and now her and Emma. And he'd nearly lost everything because of it. Hours blurred, folding into each other like pages drenched in rain. Sienna stayed awake through all of them. At some point, a doctor came out removing his gloves. "He's stable," he said. She collapsed in relief, breath-breaking tears spilling down her face before she could stop them. "Is he awake soon?" the doctor said. "He asked for you before he went under." That sentence nearly brought her to her knees. She carried Emma to the waiting room, where volunteers brought blankets and warm chocolate milk. Emma finally dozed off, tiny fingers still fisted in Sienna's shirt. But Sienna couldn't rest. She kept seeing it, Alex pushing her aside, stepping in front of the knife, falling in her arms. And the way he looked at her like she mattered more than the blood soaking his hands. Hours later, a nurse approached. "You can see him now." Sienna moved slowly, almost afraid the room would disappear if she walked too fast. Alex lay propped up in the bed chest, wrapped oxygen tube in his nose. Weak, yes, but alive. His eyes opened the second she stepped in. "You're safe," he whispered. "Good." He sounded like he was reminding himself, not her. She rushed to his side, gripping the rail of the bed. "Alex," she choked. "You shouldn't have. I would do it again." She shook her head fiercely. "No, you nearly died." He gave a faint, pained smirk. Would have been worth it. A tear rolled down her cheek, unwanted but unstoppable. "Don't say that. Don't you dare." His eyes softened, really softened in a way she didn't know he could. "Sienna, look at me." She lifted her eyes. "You once asked me whether I wanted a home or just walls," he murmured. "And then you made me realize that walls don't keep you safe. They just keep you alone." Her throat closed. She could barely breathe. "You're not alone," she whispered. "Not anymore. You have people who care about you." He let out a shaky breath. "I want a home." She blinked. "What?" His hand reached out, slow, trembling, and she took it instantly. "If the choice is home or walls," he said, "then I choose home. If it's with you." Her breath stuttered. Her heart felt too full, too fragile, too everything. "Alex, you don't have to say this because you're hurt or scared, or I'm saying it because I almost lost the chance." He swallowed hard. "I'm stepping down as CEO for now. Hale Dynamics will survive, but I need to fix myself, to fix things I should have faced years ago." She blinked fast. "Alex, the company will not fall apart," he said, "but I will if I don't do this." His voice quieted but grew steadier. "I want to create a foundation for shelters. I want to help you expand Haven for her. And I want to be part of something that isn't just money or glass walls." Her heart flipped. "You don't have to do all that for me. I'm not." His eyes held hers with rare, devastating sincerity. "I'm doing it for us." She froze. "Us." The word sank into her bones like warmth, finally breaking through winter. Before she could answer, Commotion sounded in the hall. Raised voices, camera shutters shouted questions. A nurse rushed in. "Mr. Hale, I'm so sorry the media found out you're here. They're crowding the entrance." Sienna's stomach dropped. Alex grimaced. "Of course they are," the nurse added. "And someone leaked that you were injured while protecting a woman. They're demanding to know if she's your girlfriend." Sienna felt heat rise to her face. Alex closed his eyes briefly. "Let them talk." "Alex," she whispered, "this will make the rumors so much worse." He opened his eyes again, calmer than she expected. "Let them get worse. Why? Because for once, I'm not going to hide." Her heart thudded. He looked at her like he'd made a choice, long before the knife ever touched his skin. But before she could say anything, another nurse hurried in. "Mr. Hale, you have to see this." She turned on the wall-mounted TV. A news anchor spoke in a solemn tone. "Anonymous sources claim Alexander Hale was stabbed by a woman he was romantically involved with. They say she endangered him, leading him to step away from Hale Dynamics due to emotional compromise." Sienna's mouth fell open. "What? No, that's not." The anchor continued. "Critics argue this is proof that his involvement with community shelters has muddied his judgment." Sienna stared in horror. "They're blaming me." Alex touched her wrist weakly. "No, they're blaming me. They always do." She shook her head. "Alex, your reputation, your company is not more important than you." The simplicity of that sentence shattered her composure. She leaned over him, forehead nearly touching his. "You're going to destroy yourself defending me. Then let me." His voice broke. "Please." Tears slid down her cheeks and landed on his shoulder. He didn't flinch. He only squeezed her hand. But deep inside, she knew this could ruin him. It was exactly what he didn't need. More scandal, more cameras, more lies. And yet, he was choosing her anyway. And that terrified her more than the knife ever had. "Alex," her voice cracked, "let me protect you too." His eyes softened again. "Then stay." For a moment, the world sharpened, stilled, and she finally whispered in the faintest, trembling voice, "I'm not leaving. Not now, not ever." He exhaled shakily, his hand dragging weakly along hers, like a man clinging to something he thought he'd never be allowed to have. Something like hope. 1 year later, Manhattan looked different, not because the skyline had changed, but because Alex Hale had. The man once wrapped in glass silence and distance now stood at the entrance of the newly expanded shelter, the haven of home, talking with volunteers, greeting survivors by name, even handing out warm meals during community nights. Sienna watched him from across the courtyard, her heart warming at the sight. He still wore tailored coats and impossibly perfect shirts, but the sharp edges that once defined him had softened. The cold billionaire with a locked heart was gone. In his place stood a man who finally understood that strength wasn't in isolation. It was in choosing connection, choosing people, choosing love. Alex waved at Emma, who was hopping on the sidewalk squares, naming them after cartoon characters. "Emma, careful," Sienna called. "You're getting close to the curb. I'm fine." Emma giggled, then spotted Alex and ran straight to him. Daddy Lex. Alex bent carefully, still mindful of the scar running along his ribs, and scooped her into his arms. The first time she called him that, he cried. Not publicly, of course. Alex Hale never cried publicly. But that night alone at the shelter's rooftop garden, Sienna found him wiping silent tears with the back of his wrist. "You okay?" she had whispered. "She called me us, Dad." He had said, his voice breaking in the middle of the sentence. Today, as Emma wrapped her arms around his neck, Alex pressed a kiss to her forehead like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Hey, little star, did you show your mom your drawing?" "Not yet." Emma squirmed down and rushed to Sienna, handing her a crumpled paper. It was a crude but heartfelt drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. Above them, written in shaky crayons, the word home. Sienna felt her chest tighten. She crouched down and kissed Emma's cheek. "It's perfect." The little girl beamed and ran off to play with other children in the courtyard. Alex stepped beside Sienna. "She's been drawing that all week." Sienna smiled. "She's happy." "Because she feels safe," Alex said softly. For a moment he studied Sienna's face, her gentle strength, the hints of tiredness replaced by peace, the warmth that had always drawn him in, even when he tried to resist. "What are you thinking?" he asked. She glanced at him. "That you've changed. For the better, I hope." "For the brave," she corrected. His lips curved slow and real. "I like that." A group from the city council approached to discuss funding, and Alex excused himself with a promise. "Don't leave. I have something after." He moved across the courtyard with confidence, no longer the isolated billionaire, but a leader rooted firmly in the community he once tried to avoid. Sienna walked through the shelter's new wing, tracing her fingers along the warm wooden walls Alex insisted on installing. "Glass feels cold," he had said. "These walls should feel like arms, not barriers." He'd poured his own money, his own sweat literally into the construction. Sienna still remembered the day she found him hammering beams with construction workers, wearing a dusty shirt and jeans. "You're the CEO," she'd teased. "Not today," he'd answered. "Today I'm building something real." She stopped at the window overlooking the city. A breeze carried faint laughter from outside. This was what she'd dreamed Haven for her would become: safe, warm, alive. And Alex had made it possible. Suddenly, a text buzzed her phone. "Meet me at the penthouse. I have something to show you." Alex, her heart skipped. He rarely used that place anymore since moving into a more modest home near the shelter. Curious, she headed over. When she arrived, the door was slightly open. "Alex," she called. No answer. She stepped inside, then froze. The penthouse looked unrecognizable. Where cold glass walls once stood now, there were stacks of broken panels on the floor, the remnants of a world Alex no longer lived in. But the real shock was him. Alex stood in the center of the living room, holding a heavy demolition hammer shirt, sleeves rolled up, hair messy sweat on his forehead. Next to him lay shattered pieces of the once iconic floor-to-ceiling window walls. Alex. Sienna gasped. "What are you doing?" He turned to her with a breathless, almost triumphant smile. "Finishing something I should have done years ago." She stared at the destruction around him. You did this," every piece he said, "every wall that kept me separated from the world. From you." Her throat tightened. "You didn't have to, yes," he whispered firmly. "I did." He lifted the hammer again and walked toward the last remaining section of cold glass. "This was where I watched the world without living in it. Where I hid, where I convinced myself I didn't need anyone." He turned, meeting her eyes with piercing vulnerability. "But then you whispered something that cracked the first wall." Sienna felt tears sting her eyes. "Alex." The hammer swung. The final glass shattered. Silence followed, deep, powerful, symbolic. He set the hammer down and motioned for her to follow him into the next room. When she stepped inside, she stopped breathing. The room glowed softly with warm amber lights, wood panel walls, a plush rug, a shelf filled with children's books and soft blankets. handmade frames already waiting for photos, a small table with 3 cups, a place designed not for glass but for people. This, Alex said quietly, is the homeroom. Sienna covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed. Alex, it's beautiful. It's ours, he said. Only if you want it to be. Slowly he walked toward her and slipped a small key into her hand. Not symbolic, real, solid, warm from being held tightly. This key, he whispered, is for the room I built with my hands and the life I want to build with you. Her breath trembled. Alex, I don't need walls anymore, he said, stepping closer. I need a home, and home is you. She couldn't speak. Her heart was too full, her eyes too wet. He touched her cheek gently. Say you'll stay. Say this can be our life. She leaned her forehead to his, whispering with the same softness that started everything home, not walls. His eyes closed in relief. Their lips met soft, warm final, sealing a promise born from fear, rebuilt in healing and completed in love. The first snow of December drifted over Manhattan like a promise, soft, slow, and gentle in the way winter sometimes tried to apologize for being cold. From the penthouse balcony, now open air instead of glass, Sienna watched flakes spiral down the night sky, settling softly over the city that had once felt too loud, too fast, too dangerous. Now it felt like home. Behind her, warm amber light from the homeroom spilled into the living space. Children's laughter echoed faintly from inside Emma, and 2 girls from the shelter having a weekend sleepover that Alex insisted on hosting. If this place is a home, he'd said it should have the noise of one. Sienna turned just as Emma ran out, in fuzzy socks waving a drawing. Mommy, look, it's us. She held up a picture, 3 stick figures, a small house, and above it a large key drawn in bright yellow. The label said, Our Forever Home. Sienna knelt, her heart warming. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Daddy Lex said homes have keys. Emma said proudly. Not walls. Before Sienna could reply, footsteps approached. Alex stood in the doorway of the homeroom, sleeves, rolled up hair slightly messy, from wrangling 3 energetic kids, and the softest smile tugging at his lips. A year ago, he looked like a man trying to survive his own heartbeat. Now he looked like someone who had finally found where that heartbeat belonged. Everything okay in here? He asked, stepping forward. Emma rushed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. He lifted her without hesitation, holding her with the kind of tenderness no one would have believed of the former Lockhart billionaire. Perfect, Sienna said. Everything is perfect. Emma wriggled, whispering, Can we have hot chocolate? Alex chuckled, already making it. He set Emma down, and she ran off squealing. As soon as she disappeared, Sienna rose, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You're good with them, she murmured. You're even better, Alex replied. He stepped closer, slipping his arms around her waist. The world outside faded until only the warmth of him existed. They swayed slowly, like dancing without music. Hard to believe this was once a fortress, she whispered, glancing around. It was a cell, he corrected softly. I just didn't know it until you showed me what a home feels like. She pressed a kiss to his shoulder. You built it yourself. No. He tilted her chin up gently. I built the room. You built the home. Her breath caught. Before she could answer, the elevator dinged a soft, familiar sound. Alex's eyebrow lifted. The surprise is here. Surprise, she blinked. What surprise he gave her, that rare boyish smirk she'd grown to love. The elevator doors slid open. 2 movers stepped out, carrying 3 large wooden crates. Stamped with a logo, she recognized Hale Dynamics Archive. Alex, he walked forward, lifting the top of the first crate. Inside lay old framed photos of his mother, of Elena, of moments he once sealed away because they hurt too much. I told myself these belonged behind glass, he said, locked away, untouched. He lifted a picture of a young Alex holding a puppy, both smiling. But a home deserves stories, even the painful ones. When he looked at her, his eyes were wet. I want our home to hold everything that made me who I am. The good, the broken, the healing. Her chest tightened. Alex. He pulled out another crate and opened it. Inside blueprints, dozens, hundreds. These, he said, are the designs for shelters I want to build across the country. Safe places, places with real walls but open hearts. Tears filled her eyes. You've been planning this ever since that night in the rain, he said softly. Ever since you whispered the question that changed my life. Her heart melted all over again. The moment she'd whispered, "Do you want a home?" or just walls had been born. From fear, compassion, and the gentlest kind of hope. She didn't know then that it would break a billionaire's armor. There's one more thing, Alex said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, not jewelry-shaped, but something flatter, smaller. He opened it. Inside lay a single key gold symbol, engraved with a tiny symbol, a circle with 3 lines branching from it. What's this? She whispered. He took her hand, placing the key in her palm. This is the key to every long-term decision in my life, Alex said. My legal team argued against it. My board fought me on it, but I didn't budge. She stared at him. Alex. He swallowed. This key means you have equal say in every home we build together, every shelter project, every family decision, everything that matters. Her breath trembled. Alex, this is a promise, he murmured. Not a proposal, not yet. His thumb brushed her cheek. This key says you belong in every future I create. Tears slipped down her face. He wiped them gently. I never gave anyone a key before, he whispered. Not to my home, not to my heart, but you. His voice cracked. You unlocked both. She leaned into him, forehead to his. Then let me say this clearly, she whispered. Home with you, always. The balcony lights dimmed as night deepened. Snow floated around them like tiny, glowing feathers. Inside, Emma laughed with the other girls. The homeroom glowed like a lantern of warmth in the cold city sky. And Alex, hale man of glass, man of loss man once locked behind walls, finally exhaled the breath he had been holding for years, because he was no longer alone. He finally, truly, undeniably, had a home. Before we wrap up tonight's story, take one last look at that final scene. The snow drifting outside, the warm glow inside the homeroom, Emma's laughter, echoing like a promise of a better life, and Alex placing the key, the one he never gave anyone, into Sienna's hand. That moment right there isn't just an ending. It's a reminder that even the coldest hearts can thaw. Even the highest walls can fall. Even the most broken people can build something beautiful when someone whispers the right truth at the right time. If you felt that if this story touched you, warmed you, maybe even broke you a little before putting you back together, then stay with us. Because on this channel we tell stories that matter, stories where love isn't perfect, but it's brave. Where healing takes work, but it's worth it. Where billionaires aren't just rich, they're human. And the women beside them aren't just love interests, they're the reason hearts finally unlock. Now I want to talk directly to you. Yes, you, the one, watching from your couch, from your car, on break from a small apartment in Texas, from a big city in New York, from campuses, from night shifts, from anywhere life has you right now. If you're someone who's been carrying battles silently, if you're someone who's ever felt like you had to build walls just to feel safe, if you've ever whispered your hopes into the dark, hoping someone would finally listen, then this story was for you. And you deserve more stories like this, more healing, more hope, more heartbreak stitched back together, more characters who feel like someone you could meet out there in the real world. If you want more moments like when Sienna whispered home, or just walls, or when Alex rebuilt his penthouse with his bare hands just to prove he'd changed, then make sure you don't leave without joining this family. Hit that like button. It tells YouTube that stories like this deserve to be seen. Smash subscribe so you never miss tomorrow's chapter. We drop new emotional cinematic stories every single week. And don't forget to comment below because I want to hear from you. Truly. Tell me, did you choose walls once? Or did someone in your life become your home? Or maybe you're still searching for that person. If so, trust me, you're not alone. This community, we see you, we hear you, and we make space for your voice. Also tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing where my story family is. New York, Nevada, Florida, Jamaica, Nigeria, UK, Philippines, South Africa. You all are part of this home we're building together. And if you want to support the channel even more, share this story with a friend who's struggling, someone who deserves a reminder that healing is real, that love is worth trying for, that no one is too broken to be loved fully. Before I go, I'll leave you with this. Homes aren't made of walls. They're made of people, of forgiveness, of second chances, and of the courage to finally say, I want more than survival, I want love. If you're ready for your next story, don't move. Just click the next video waiting right here on the screen. I promise it's going to touch your heart all over again. Till then, this is Emma. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are home here, always.